Welcome, Tim.
Thank you very much.
You put on a great seminar today at the Ritz-Carlton in Laguna Niguel, and you are very much a person who's the opposite of food and wine pairing. Is that what your take is?
Well, what I'm trying to do is remove the necessity of thinking that there is this idea of pairing, which virtually anybody in our industry already recognizes doesn't really exist. It's just kind of a way that we've come about going about wine and food. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm just trying to promote an idea that it's entirely possible to make great tasting food, and when you get it to the highest intensity of taste and flavor, wine is good, and that's it.
Yeah.
So in that sense.
Your seminar was really wonderful. You were focusing on the four elements of what people absorb. It's taste, flavor, aroma, and bouquet.
Correct. Yeah.
And I really love the example that Tim used of his young son. When you're born, your taste is very well, very natural almost. And if there's something that disagrees with you biologically, you just spit it out.
It's the idea. The function of taste is part of our survival instinct, and it allows us to make a decision: is this food safe and nutritious, or is it dangerous? So that's essential in how we ultimately determine whether a wine and food match is good or bad, is whether or not it provides us pleasure. And then later in life, we start to have emotional attachments that override the sensory information. And if the emotional payoff is strong enough, then we get pleasure from that rather than the actual sensation, and we acquire the taste.
Right.
So in the wine and food arena, we've never really recognized that before. So, and that creates argument at the table. So here are all these people that sit around at the table arguing, this is good, this is bad, versus, oh, I really like this, well, I don't, and that's fine. And we've found a way to take that argument out of the whole quotient.
Let's talk about the progressive wine list,
yes.
because this is the first time I heard about it. It's something that you developed?
Well, it's something that I first created as a possibility about 15 or so years ago, and it was actually for a country club in Atlanta. And what we did is we simply arranged the wines from milder to stronger tasting. And about 5 years ago, I got involved in a lot very intensive educational work with restaurateurs, and we kept putting wine lists down on the table. And I said, what's the function of this? What's it supposed to do, and what's not working in our industry? And it always went back to nobody understood the wine list. And we couldn't make really the distinction between the sensory or the emotional implications. So I sort of dusted off the idea of the progressive wine list, and we reanalyzed it and saw how powerful it could become.
Right.
And it's now, it stands as something that could be a universal format for our industry, that anybody that walked into a restaurant that's using it can make the simplest distinctions of what's milder or stronger tasting in the wines. We've got restaurants and hotels in Switzerland, in England, in Australia, and all around the world that are employing this. So here finally is a comfort level. You walk in, you say, boy, I know nothing about Swiss white wines, but I know typically here's the style I like. Well, here's the ones that fit that style. It's just breathtaking.
Well, it is very refreshing, because a lot of people for a lot of years had a method of choosing the second least expensive.
Right.
I don't know where that came from. Like, you have to impress the waiter.
Well, we have an industrial psychologist that we work with, and we talked a lot about buying patterns and what people do.
Yeah.
So in a typical wine list, you go from least to most expensive, or if you're real radical, from most to least expensive.
Yeah.
And the thing is that's not a way to order wine. It tells you nothing about the taste, and not. Emotionally, for me, quality means strong, it means tannic, and taste that an awful lot of people just simply don't like. So if I'm the geek that's making the recommendations, I'm not doing anything for your enjoyment.
Right.
You know, it's just what you're getting from me. The other thing is, one of the funny parts of the development of this wine list, somebody had a wine list where you've got the little bylines with the description of every wine.
Right.
So, well, my wine list communicates because I describe all the wines. One of the participants at the program took all the wines and separated them in another column, the descriptions, but out of order. Said, oh, these are great wine descriptions, can you put them back? And he couldn't, because it's all useless stuff. You know,
Yeah.
it's the way we've fallen into talking about wine, and it's just crazy.
So how should consumers order? You're at a restaurant, you have in your mind, and I don't know, maybe this is predetermined, but you want to spend between $30 and $45 on a bottle of wine. I don't think that's too inexpensive or too expensive. It's pretty middle of the road. So your eyes automatically just kind of look at,
scanning.
yeah, you scan things and you see things that are within your price range. Then you see things that are familiar to you.
Right, it's really funny to understand how you as a consumer are interacting with this whole thing, because we all do this. We go down, okay, here's where I want to spend in France, Napa, Sonoma, blah, blah. You know, we start to then go through this emotional countdown of what's going to be good or bad. And again, we're not using taste as the basis necessarily.
Right.
So what we're recommending is people that demand a progressive wine list when you go out. Say, I want to know what these wines taste like. And when people fall back into the Eno babble, say, no, is it mild, is it stronger tasting? And the more that this is demanded, the more that this will become the foundation. As we were discussing, very shortly we'll have over 2,000 hotels and restaurants around the world using this, and we're training more people to do the conversions and to fundamentally make this an act of global change. So don't ever hesitate to ask whoever's helping you with the wine, what does the wine taste like? Mm-hmm. Here's what I like. What can you help me find?
Exactly, exactly. And what can a good wait person say? Do they usually prod you and say, what kind of wines do you drink at home, or what kind of...
Yeah, that's the essential questions. What do you normally drink?
Yeah. And
be accurate about that. If you love white Zinfandel, say, that's what I drink, and I'd like something that tastes like that. And don't hesitate. If you like red wine, but you don't like the bitterness and astringency, you might be looking for a wonderful Merlot or a Pinot Noir, but then the geek at the other end might gauge Merlot is only good when it tastes like Cabernet.
Right.
And again, that's where the conversation breaks down. So if you like Merlot for being unctuous and fruity and very mild tasting, make sure that that's what's getting communicated.
Exactly. Now, waiters, apparently in this economy, waiters are a very hard to come by commodity. They're not always very well trained.
That's right.
You have to train them yourself. So what can a restaurant manager do to train a young waiter about how to, they're all into, they want to give the consumer the experience, the great wine, the great food,
right.
But they also want to have a profit. They also want to sell a wine that, maybe a $20 or $30 wine to these people. How can they help the wait staff tell the consumer or help the consumer?
The number one thing is to create a progressive wine list, because it represents a crude tool that distinguishes the wine by their placement from how they taste. And we have ways to do this, whether you have 20 wines on a list or 1,000 wines on the list. So what you do now is you train the staff on the tool. And the tool is now the foundation of how to communicate with the customer to get them in the range of what they like. And then what we construe as education, wine education, is actually more emotion driven than it is education. Because what you want your staff to ultimately be able to do, oh, well, you like this style of wine? Oh, well, if you like that style of wine, here's what we have to offer you. The price range runs from $20 to $75. And my particular favorite, I've had this, and I just love it. And I went to the winery. The emotional aspect of it is huge.
Right.
But unfortunately, we're not giving anybody a platform to start with.
Yeah.
We jump into the scientific and the technical and the esoteric without ever laying a foundation, and that's why the whole wine education thing is such a hoax as far as I'm concerned. We're not educating anybody.